Swirly, swirly, swirly. And we are live wrestling with Maverick. This is the first of a long series that I'm calling a superstar series. And we got a great guest well, not around me right now. He's on cam. 502 Slugger, how you doing?
I'm good. Sitting here at work, grinding it out. Well, more or less.
Well, the name of this episode is From Strong to Slugger. So let's get into it. What was your initial interest in professional wrestling? Like, where did all this start?
With pro wrestling, it started during the hype of more or less ECW and like FMW and All Japan. I ain't even going to sugarcoat it. Like, I was drawn to death matches. Like, that's what got me hooked on wrestling, was deathmatch wrestling. But I would say what really piqued my interest in it and such was more FMW, All Japan, ECW. That's what mainly piqued my interest, more or less. And then, of course, I did a little bit of backyard and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially in the late '90s, were heavily influenced by ECW. I know for a fact I was. And me and my friends would go out on the trampoline and try to do what we saw on TV.
We didn't really. There were times that we just joked around on a trampoline and stuff, because I was always with the same group of guys when we went through our backyard phase and such. But we also had very cool parents, in the sense of my buddy Larry D's parents was very cool in letting us build a ring in his backyard. Like, we built a ring to take bumps on and stuff. And we were intelligent enough to follow along in wrestling to figure out how to somewhat safely fall on our backs and protect ourselves to a degree. So, we had a little bit of a leg up in our backyard things. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, even before the trampoline thing, with me at least, we were wrestling on mattresses, on concrete or a grassy area. And then we advanced to the trampoline later on. So let's talk about your little stint you had through Kentucky wrestling. Now, where did you start? Was it MWA or KCW?
Neither one.
Which one did you start with?
I got trained, or we started getting trained. Me and about 4 other people started getting trained in the ring that we built in Larry's backyard. Learning basics, how to bump, how to take basic maneuvers, how to give basic maneuvers. And then that progressed into, at the period of time when I broke in, there was a bit of a rivalry in Georgetown for the city between MWA, which is Mountain Wrestling Association, and CWA, Terry Allen CWA, which is Central Wrestling Alliance at the time.
Yeah.
And my trainer that broke me in ended up, I guess, leaving MWA and going with Terry Allen's promotion. And Terry was gracious enough to basically loan him the ring to train us. And that's where I first broke in at, was Terry Allen's CWA. And then it progressed from there a little bit.
Yeah, because whenever I discovered you was actually in KCW in Lexington, and the rivalry you had with Aftershock. So can you explain a little bit about that? Like, how did that all come together? The rivalry with Aftershock, and did that have a dramatic effect on your career moving forward?
Of course, it had effect on me. The guy, I probably bled more with him than I had anybody else in professional wrestling. That kind of started long before my wrestling career, because we met Aftershock and some of his friends sitting in a crowd at MWA watching shows. Like, he always would egg us on, give us inside little jargon to yell at the guys, that type of thing. And we became fast friends then. And then when I broke in, he had made his way back towards CWA for a period of time. And worked a few shows here and there, but the I would say the biggest one that people would talk about and remember, the two biggest ones that people remember and talk about, of course, is the first one that we had in Lexington with KCW, where
Mhm.
I guess I can say now nobody will get in trouble, but where me and him kind of threw the law out the window, the rule book out the window, and
Yeah,
let
I
it
remember that
like
night.
got a little bit of color, and I
Yeah.
let him stomp
Oh,
my head in tax and a few other things like that. So it was kind of a minor
yeah.
introduction into what we, I should say, incidentally turned out doing in Memphis, Indiana. Well, not Memphis. Let me think. It was Central Indiana. I can't remember the exact name of the town now, but it was for Bobo Jr. And me and him ended up doing a just balls to the wall match. Uh, it was a tribute show for my boy Ice Pick, and it was the week after he had passed away. So, in our minds, we wanted to kind of honor him the best way that we knew how, and that was going balls to the wall, bleed a little bit, throw some wild shit at this crowd, even though it was such a small venue and the crowd was so close. We still kind of went a little bit heavy with it. Um, that match is the one that most people really talk about. One, because of the point of the match was to honor like my best friend, my brother. The second point of that match was the fact that Ice Pick wanted to see me do something barefoot in death matches for a long time,
Right.
because I've done a fairly decent amount of barefoot stuff. It never really bothered me that great, but um, I wrestled that particular match barefoot in thumbtacks and all kinds of other stuff, and it got a great reaction. The color I got off of, color he got off of it, and I think that was a probably the peak of our run, as per se. Even though after that we did try to reduplicate that in another show in BFE in Indiana that nobody came to, as an Amish town.
Yeah.
And they gave us a cage and some tubes and told us to go nuts and try to recreate that, which there's no way you can recreate that because that emotion's not there. But we still did some balls out crazy stuff for the few fans that was in there. So
Yeah. I
I would
mean,
say that it did affect me to a degree, though. Yes, I would say definitely it did.
yeah.
Seeing how
The,
things turned out, anyway, I should say.
yeah. The first time I actually saw you in Aftershock was, I think, the first time in KCW. And that building was on the edge of its seat from my perspective as a fan at the time. It was crazy just to see that kind of stuff because we really didn't see it that much in Kentucky at the time.
Well, hell, you don't get to see it in Kentucky still, even though regulations have loosened up to a degree. You still don't get to see that type of stuff in Kentucky, and that's why me and him both. It was. I should. I'll say the office had an idea of
Yeah.
what we had, like, kind of had in mind, but in the same sentence, they really didn't.
Right.
Um, we hid some stuff throughout different parts of the arena or different parts of the armory and such. Push that limit a little bit further than they would have liked probably at that time. Luckily, nothing came of it. But that was definitely something that Kentucky hasn't gotten to see since back in the days before Ian Rotten ruined it for the entire state years and years ago. So yeah, when you do something that people don't get to see that often to the level that we done it, of course it's going to get that kind of reaction. And
Yeah.
it created a lot of good stories, inside stories and stuff too. Like he always swore that he never got color and that I colored him and this type of stuff. And I don't think I colored him, but if I did, hell, it worked out to his benefit because he had good color. So
Right.
he didn't
Uh,
die. He had good color.
right. I mean, it was a crazy night that night. I think that was actually the night that the infamous KCW chant started. Um, And I think it happened from a table spot with Larry, where he got tossed over the top rope and went to the table or something. I'm not sure how that whole thing started, but that was the night that infamous chant started. I actually have that on DVD still, so I still watch it
I'm pretty
sometimes.
sure that same match, there was multiple table spots that show, and I had a table spot, and that match was shot. That same match, and I was getting power bombed from the ring apron, threw a table on the floor, and as soon as I hit that table, or as soon as he went to give me the bump, I knew the table was too far out, and I was going to take a hard bump.
Yeah,
As soon as I hit the inside of that table, it flipped out from under me, didn't break my fall at all, and I just went straight to the concrete. And
yeah.
what was even funnier is my dad and my uncle were sitting front row right in front of that table, and one of the legs hit my uncle. And they both looked down and they was like, God damn, boy, you all right? I was like, get the fuck out of here. So it was all
I
good. That was a
actually, I
hard night.
actually, I actually still have that DVD, like to this day.
I
I
would like
actually
to see
watched.
that match. I have asked Bobby Blade and I've asked everybody I thought that might have footage of that match. I need to see that match.
Well, if you want, I can make you a copy of it, and you can have the whole thing.
I'm down. I'm in. I'll pay you.
I'll
I'll
make
pay
you.
you.
You don't gotta pay me for it. I'll make you a copy of it.
I'm just saying that match meant something. I need that in my collection.
Yeah, I think I bought it at the next KCW show. I
Yeah.
think it's how that went down.
That
Um,
entire show was wild. I remember that everything about that night because hell, right after that match, I walk out back and my girl I was talking to at that time and I'm still in tight with was waiting on me out back and was picking tacks out of my back and let's just say I got the rub, so it worked out great.
right now, you did mention Ice Pick. How did losing him affect you? I know you walked away from the business for a while. Like, how did that affect you mentally?
It was a number of things that caused me to walk away, not necessarily just losing my boy Ice Pick. A number of things happened in a chain reaction almost. Like it started with, we'll have to go back, like rewind this for just a second. And like not long before that happened, me and him were running a pretty good little tag team across the state. Like we were getting booked frequently. And the main show we were on was in Lawrenceburg. And they had put tag straps on us to carry their tag team division. And it was about 2 weeks after that. Well, the night we won those, I made a stupid promo and put it online, which immediately got heat put on us from people we didn't need heat from. And ultimately, what ended up happening was those people showed up the next week at a benefit show we were doing for a gentleman that was having issues raising money for some treatments for his chemotherapy and such. We show up to the venue. Well, about 15 minutes before we get to the venue, Big Al Steele calls me. He's like, "Don't show up." I'm like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Bro, don't come in the building. Leave. They're here waiting on you." I'm like, "Oh shit, that's what I needed to hear." Meaning the athletic commission was there waiting on me. They caught wind of my promo or my little promo video I put up with me and Ice Pick in the car and me rolling up a little bit of schmiz on the belt. Commission caught that. They showed up the next week. Me and him got caught. We're suspended for a year at that point. So once that happened, he looked at me. He's like, "Well, Indiana or bust." And I'm like, "Sure." That following week, we go up to Indiana. We do our last tag team match. Me and him versus Aftershock, Jimmy Clough, I believe is what it was. And beat the hell out of each other, had a good match. The following week, the accident with Glenn Ice Pick happens where he gets killed in a drunk driver accident. In the week between that accident and the match between Ice and the match between me and Aftershock to memorialize him, I flipped script. Just, you know what I'm saying, just kind of went crazy, wasn't eating, wasn't drinking, just let it consume me. Felt enormous pressure build up and such like that. And then I'll go do that match with Aftershock. For some reason, I feel an immediate release after that. And it wasn't a release where, hey, I can move on from this point of time and move forward wrestling. It was one of those, all right, I'm done. Like, I feel like I've done all I wanted to do. So I took a little step back, and at that point I was considering coming back to Kentucky, and a lot of things happened in that period of time, and I just didn't have that fire to want to come back, really. I mean, I had put so much time into learning, um, like what people in Kentucky wanted me to learn, work the style that people in the shows that I was around mostly wanted me to work, which is straying away from death matches, learning how to work traditional style. It honestly turned into me um, honing in on my Southern Memphis style that I naturally carried from training. It evolved into me bringing in strong style work into the area, bringing in European style catchers catch can wrestling into the area. And I got to, like, I did pretty
Yeah.
good at it, but I wasn't happy with it. So the combination of that, Glenn's accident, and me losing my mind, basically, it wasn't worth it. So I stepped back. A little
Now
bit of
have you
took a little bit of
now
while for me to get shake back from that. Like, I
now
still haven't fully shake back from it.
now have you now after all that's happened, did you go back to doing your deathmatch style, or did you go back to doing traditional after that?
Uh, After Glenn passed, I had no want to go back and doing normal style wrestling except to build up a story for a deathmatch type thing. So I did a little bit of both, but predominantly death matches because I've always just naturally been better at it. I mean, I'm not by any means to the level of a John Wayne Murdoch or a like Cole Radrick or nobody like that. I never was to that level. I was one of the more typical bigger guys that would just do some insane shit and got
Yeah.
lucky a few times and got some good reactions. So that,
So now I'm going to ask you a really, this is something that I've been wanting to know for a long time.
all right.
What's the difference between deathmatch wrestling, traditional wrestling, and why is there so much hate from either side? Like what's the big divide there?
Difference between deathmatch wrestling and traditional wrestling is weapons.
But
Honestly,
what
I mean,
but but
like
what's
it's
like the
plain and
but what's
simple.
like the big the big divide from traditional wrestlers to deathmatch wrestlers? Like they think that what's the hate there?
The hate there predominantly from this area anyway is this area is saturated with a lot of old school style Memphis guys. And they were never really brought up around that a whole lot. They look at it as garbage wrestling because they think that guys are depending on the weapons to get them over. More as if you actually watch good deathmatch wrestlers like the guys I mentioned, Murdoch or Radrick or Drew Parker, those guys are legitimately great wrestlers that integrate weapons. And that is the absolute best way to go about it. Yes, you still have some bigger guys out there and you still have some lower branded companies that are hack and slash. That kind of hurts the reputation a little bit. But I think a lot of it derives from a lot of guys were brought up in an old school mentality, and that just is not something they're accustomed to be around. Like, that's not, in their opinion, that's not getting over. That's shock value, more or
Yeah.
less.
So when you navigate away from wrestling, when does your interest start with slap fighting?
Uh, well, it honestly came up in the midst of my last run that I was a part of as in deathmatch wrestling. In 2018, I got lucky enough to be invited to compete in Prince of Death for IWA Mid-South for the third time, and I actually showed up this time because I was invited previous 2 years and didn't show up. I show up to this one. I get put in a match with two guys that I'm incredibly comfortable with and friends with. And a couple spots happened in that match that blew people's minds that they didn't expect from me. I got a good reaction, a little bit of help from some buddies in the locker room. Bam, I'm in King of Death matches. That snowballed into me doing matches in Jersey in tournaments and bigger companies in West Virginia doing tournaments. It is a snowball effect. I did all that, and once King of Death matches was over, I ended up having a very bad staph infection where I was in the hospital for a number of days. And after that injury, I kind of lost my steam a little bit, so I just kind of faded out. And then this is where it starts to lead into how I found slap bite. I ended up getting in, seeing a post online where IWA Deep South was looking for someone to slap fight Aiden Blackheart because a lot of guys were not trying to slap Aiden Blackheart where he won a slap contest at the Gathering of the Juggalos.
Right.
I've never been scared to get slapped, hit, whatever. So I was like, hey, I'll do it. Sign me up. And that turned into me doing Carnage Cup and a few other shows for them. But at the same time, I was in preparation for this slap fight with Aiden. So come the night of that fight, me and Aiden ride down there together, all this stuff. Nothing predetermined, nothing talked about. We get there, and I'm like, dude, you knock me out, no harm, no foul. I knock you out, no harm, no foul. We're still boys. So come time for our fight, he lands a good one on me. I land a solid one on him. We both recover, come to the second round. He hits me, I recover, I hit him, he stumbles. My third strike put him down. And it just so happened at that Deep South show, watching that slap contest, was the owner of Slap Fight Championship, JT.
Okay.
And he immediately liked the character, my promo that I cut before that fight. I wouldn't say character. He just liked how I carried myself, how I was able to talk pretty freely on a promo without stuttering, and like I knew how to talk. I knew how to carry myself. And he offered me a shot with Slap Fight Championship at that point. But leading up to that fight, I ended up having another smaller fight with Deep South, another slap fight, where I knocked the guy out in 2 shots. He didn't know what he was getting into, so he was walking into it blind, and I knew what was going to happen. But eventually, what ultimately happened was Deep South got me into slap fight, more or less, to be cut and dry.
I did not know that. I don't think me and you ever talked about how you got into it. I've seen your videos with you.
It started off as a one-off thing. I thought it was going to be like a one-off thing. Me and Aiden just going to make a quick payday and get the fuck out.
Right.
Ultimately, what happened was Slap Fight discovered something that they thought they could put some investments behind.
Yeah, and now it's like a renaissance of your career almost.
I wouldn't say that because not to say this with any disrespect or nothing, but I'm not into slap fighting like I was death matches.
Right.
Like my whole heart was involved in deathmatch wrestling. Slap fight is, I don't really know how to put it, a chance for my face to get out on a mainstream and more or less just prove that people that used to call me soft and all this type stuff, that's not the case. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I don't know why anyone would even call you soft, considering what I've seen you do.
That's all character and show, man. I'm nothing like that in person. Like, that's just me amped up by about 20. That's all that is.
Now, have you ever thought about stepping back into death matches, or are you completely done with that?
Uh, I wouldn't. I'm gonna go with the cliche: never say never. Right now, I'm in a process of trying to cut weight, trying to get in better shape, prepare for my next slap competition. But if I should so happen to get into a decent enough shape where I think I can sufficiently carry myself through a match without hurting myself or hurting an opponent and stuff like that, and stars align and all that type of stuff, I'm not against it. But I'm also up there in age now where shit hurts a lot more. So I don't know that I can necessarily hang with the level of what guys are doing nowadays in deathmatch wrestling. Like,
Yeah.
it's easier for me to stand there and stick my chin out, slap somebody back, than it is for me to go in there and put 15 minutes into a match that I'm going to feel for at least a week to 2 weeks after. So,
Well, Jess Smith had a question, and I know you probably can't answer it, but I'll read it out to you. When is your next competition?
if you want to see some good competition, TBS every week after Dynamite, I believe it is when Power Slap comes on.
I do
That's
believe so. Yeah.
that's your weekly. That's your competition. As far as for me, there's nothing that I can really give out at the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
But once he knows for sure, I will let everyone else know whenever he knows
yeah,
for sure.
whenever I can get some, whenever I can lock down some dates and such, which is more on me and my schedule, then I can sufficiently let everybody know and what's going on and such. But with my work schedule and a lot of other things about to be picking up, it's going to be, I'm not going to be fighting like every month, 2 months, or nothing like that. It's going to be whenever I can more or less fit it in. And
Right.
that's not trying to take a shot at the company or like throw it on the back burner or nothing, but it's just is what it is. Like,
Exactly.
I got a good shoot job. I'm not going to mess that up for,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? I
Now,
don't want to mess that up.
me and you have talked a little bit about the state of wrestling now. Like, where do you see it in the next 5 years with AEW and WWE and all these other independent companies?
It's steadily improving. People are finally adhering to the moniker of leave wrestling better than you found it. And
Yeah.
that's what's being done. The more companies that are out there with legit talent on them, the more places for guys to work. Like, I love the fact that AEW is giving WWE some competition because it's giving a lot of other guys places to work. And then you got top indie shows like Game Changer, and still got PWG doing some stuff. And I mean, Warrior Wrestling, and there's a lot of very good shows out there, which creates a lot
Um,
of good work for
Speaking of
guys.
Game Changer, have you ever worked for Game Changer?
No, never did. I've met Brett, and like when I went to Jersey for On Point Survival of the Sickest tournament right before King of Death,
Hmm.
it was in Game Changers venue, the old compound. And
Yeah.
I got, at that point in time, Brett was still in partners with Danny. I got to meet Brett, Danny D'Amato, and uh, I don't think I fit. Even when I was in my run, I didn't fit their
You
roster mode.
didn't.
Like, I'm not that caliber of a wrestler.
Mm.
Like, if you put me in a match with someone like Tank or one of the old school guys that I came up around somewhat, yes, I can do something like pretty decent. But if I was given someone like Murdoch or Cologne or somebody like that, I can't I can't hang with those guys. I'm completely honest and real about it. I'm not to that level. I never
Mm.
was to that level. So I mean,
I just didn't know
I
if you
think
like ever worked with Game Changer or not.
would have been nice to. I mean, I wouldn't have turned the opportunity down, but I don't think it would have benefited them anyway. It would have benefited me having that on my resume, but I don't think it really would have helped elevate them much. So business just was never not there. not between us two anyway.
Now, I have a question going back to your influences. You said you were heavily influenced by FMW in Japan and ECW. Did you at all in any time watch any Extreme Pro Wrestling?
What, XPW?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched some of it. Like hell, I remember me and Larry buying VHS tapes of that shit constantly, and we'd always make fun of the announcer, not make fun of them, but like, I guess, needle the announcers and such some, because I mean, it was good. Like, I'm not shitting on it at all.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. It just wasn't the same. Like, I didn't follow it as hard as I did others. Let's say that.
Do you think that XPW kind of went over the line with certain things? Especially back in the day.
They could have separated, if the owner of the company could have separated wrestling from porn. That was the issue. The guy was well known for putting out some of the nastiest, sickest porn that you know what I'm saying, that's on the face of the planet. And he would do that a lot of times in the same places that shows would be ran and stuff, so wrestlers would see girls getting shit on, pissed on, stuff like that. And word gets that, you know what I'm saying, internet is wrestling's worst enemy in the sense that it exposes all. So everybody knew what was going on, and then allegations and stuff kind of ruined it for him. Their remake is doing well, but I worry that he's going to push that limit again. That's my big thing with it.
I don't think he will, for the simple fact of he's older, and I don't think that he owns a porn company anymore. I think after all that stuff went on, I think he lost it.
If you look at what he's got coming up right now with Fantasies of the Flesh, it'd make one wonder.
Well, and I have Jasmine St. Clair coming on March 4th, so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, once again, I mean, he may not be in the porn business, but to some degree has to be to land all these porn stars on his shows. And I'm not taking away from the wrestling at all. The wrestling's fucking fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
The product he's putting out right now is good. It's fucking damn good.
Isn't there a heavyweight champion, Masawa?
Masada's their heavyweight champion. Schlack's their King of Deathmatch champion, I believe, yeah.
And I think their TV champion, I want to say, is a woman. I could be wrong.
I think it's his wife.
Yeah.
Or his significant other, whatever he wants to call her.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got some good shit going on right now. Like
I know that they're on Fight, and they're actually doing their own streaming service starting next month, I think.
Nothing wrong with that. That's what you call keeping the finances in the house.
Yeah. So this has been a fun interview. And standing invitation to you anytime you want to be on. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So anything you want to say, promote, anything you want to do?
Well, I'll get this one out of the way. If you live in the central Kentucky area and you have any type of swimming pools, come see me in Georgetown, Kentucky at True Blue Pools. Open 7 days a week, starting soon. Right now, we're open 6 days a week. Monday through Friday, we're here from 9 to 6. Saturdays, we're here from 9 to 2 right now. As far as slap fight and stuff, keep a lookout, because 502 Slugger is not done. He's far from it. He's got some stuff to do. He's got some people that he's got to put hands on. And as far as anything in the immediate future, a few other things coming up. I don't want to necessarily like promote another podcast I might have, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to create any type of conflict of interest. I'm more professional than that, but keep an eye on my Facebook page, Mike Cochran on Facebook. That'll give you all the information you need to know. Plus, I'll pass it around to Mike and a few others. Easy to keep up with.
Yep, man.
And always go to Slap Fight Championship on YouTube. Type in Slap Fight Championship. Go to 502 Slugger versus Mufasa. that is the heaviest fight in slap fight history, weight wise. Me and the dude beat the absolute piss out of each other. Well worth the
Yeah.
watch. And there's so many other good fights between Wolverine, Darius, Frank the Tank. Then there's so many good up and coming guys, Okuma, Mexicutioner, Neanderthal. There's so many good guys coming out of the woodwork for these slap contests now. Keep an eye on it. It's very good shit to watch if you like violence for the sake of violence.
Right. Well, and I've been talking to people about slap fight and what they see. There's people that are for it and people that are against it. So it just depends on your cup of tea.
And I want to put this out there because I watched a fight recently on Slap Fight that got released not that long ago, and JT, the commentator on our Slap Fight pay-per-views, he does a mini interview with Frank the Tank, and in that interview, he asked Frank, so what did the doctors find when you went through all your scans recently? And this is after like 30 fights that Frank's done had. No signs of brain trauma, no signs of any CTE, nothing. Perfectly healthy 100%, which shows if you follow the rules, if you follow the rules put in place, or if you put rules in place and properly sanction your fighters, you can have very safe slap competition and it still be violent and raw. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like,
and the
as
person
safe as they can possibly get.
the person I've been talking to, actually, you actually somewhat know a little bit about him because he was in the Wrestling with Maverick group chat, and he's part of the reason why you left the group chat. Michael, the other Michael.
I ain't got no problem with him.
But basically, he doesn't understand how a grown man can sit there and get slapped in the face.
You absolutely can if you got some pride about you. If a lot of males have I don't know if you would call it a defect or what, placed in them, where a lot of males feel they need to prove their dominance.
Right.
This is a good sport to do that. I've always been one that likes to prove that I have a chin. I've been in many street fights in my life. My chin's there. I don't mind sticking it up there and letting somebody hit me because you're not going to knock me out.
Right.
And if I do get knocked out, big fucking deal.
Right.
But it's going to take a hell of a shot to knock me out. If you look at the size of the dude that I fought in the video from Slap Fight, the guy was over 400 pounds and 6'5". I was severely outmatched. He had weight on me, he had size on me. I had to reach up to hit the guy. Yeah. And I took his hardest shots, and I never got knocked out dazed once.
Yeah.
Yes, I got slightly injured,
but in a slap fight, have you ever been knocked somewhat goofy? Not particularly that one. I'm saying in any of them that you've done.
Not yet. I'm not going to say I can't be. I know I literally just said you can't knock me out, but in all realness, I haven't yet. There's always somebody out there tougher, but I'm not afraid of that part of it. I mean, that comes with being in the sport. I mean, sometimes you're going to get knocked out. Sometimes you're going to be the person knocking somebody out. It's just all in how you take it and move on from it, how you learn from it, more or less. I personally don't mind it. I mean, big deal. I mean, hit me. Go ahead.
It happens,
Yeah, I mean, big deal.
Right. I mean, I'm sure you've probably been knocked out more wrestling versus slap fighting.
Yeah, I've actually had more concussions easily in wrestling than I have from slap fight, but that was because of chairs and because I didn't want to put my hands up. When I first broke in, you were told not to put your hands up on chair shots or you'll get your hands broke. So you stick your fucking head up there and you take them. And I did. And after a number of, one time in Georgetown, I was wrestling Larry on one of the original PTW shows, the original PTW, not the Bears PTW. Mm-hmm. and like I let Larry hit me in the head with a chair. I want to say 8 times in a row, and that was the only time I've ever been out like lights out.
Yeah.
So I mean, it took 8 steel chair shots to knock my ass out. I'm conditioned to take hard shots. Like I've
Yeah.
conditioned my head for that shit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it took about the same amount for Mick Foley to say I quit at the Royal Rumble in '99.
Nah, I still think he could have took more, but I think there was a lot of that, a lot of safety involved, and I don't know. The guy, any man can get hit in the head with a chair, but you get hit so many times, it don't matter what kind of a man you are, it's gonna fuck you up.
Well, I
That
mean,
dude,
if you
like, I think he could have went further. The company did not want any type of accidental brain trauma, like
yeah,
severe injury coming
well,
upon that
you
guy.
do know that he actually initially pitched an idea for WrestleMania 14, and it was going to be a series of death matches leading up to it, with the finale being a cinematic match with him and Terry Funk and Amarillo.
Would have been cool to see. I mean, but I also get the company's side of view by not doing that as well. So
Yeah,
I mean,
they brought
would
so
have
they
could have
brought
should.
Terry Funk. So they brought Terry Funk in wearing pantyhose. That's how they.
Yeah, I always liked the alter character of Funk though. Chainsaw Charlie was very cool. I mean, that was
Oh
cool.
yeah, it was.
I
It
enjoyed
just
it.
it kind of it. At least looking back on it now, it kind of it kind of feels like a rib on Terry.
It could have been. I mean, you never know.
Yeah,
Like neither one of us ever been in the office there, so there's no telling what really
I know that
the case. You know what I'm
according to urban legend and rumor, Terry no showed a WWE event because his horse was sick.
saying? Can't blame him then. I've missed shows because I didn't have nobody to sit with my dog. Animals come first.
Yeah,
My
and
opinion. I mean, it's your animal. Who else is going to take care of it if you don't?
right, and apparently Vince didn't like that very much.
What does Vince like? That's why he sold the company.
uh, Speaking of that, do you think he's going to end up selling the company?
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Who do you think is going
Uh,
to end up being the buyer?
I, I don't care who it is as long as they continue giving work to the boys and don't shut it down. That company has been around for so long, given so many guys opportunity, and they've produced some of the most historic moments in professional wrestling history. To shut that down would be a travesty, honestly. So whoever buys it, I just hope they keep it running. Whether
Yeah,
it's the same office or not, I like however they got to do it, just keep it running. Keep guys in work. That's
exactly.
the only thing I
Because
want from it.
I mean, it's like Matt Cross's clothing line. Wrestling is forever. Hopefully, wrestling will be forever.
That's
Um, but thanks for being on. I've been trying to get you on since two guys. But and if you ever want to come back, like I said, I'm gonna be probably doing a deep dive into Texas wrestling. If you want to be on for that, because I know that's where the hardcore style originated from.
uh,
It was in between. It was in between Texas and Memphis.
I'll give the edge to Memphis. Me
Why?
personally.
Because
Eddie
Texas was the
Gilbert,
first place to have.
And Onita, and like Onita was based out of Memphis. Onita, in my opinion, is the originator.
Yeah,
At least in America, I have to give the edge to Memphis because of Onita and like Eddie Gilbert and the
but
friggin'
the reason why I say Texas is because I believe they were the first territory to have a brass knuckles championship.
Yeah, I mean, there's arguments for both. I mean, and plus you got guys coming from Texas like Necro Butcher and Bruiser Brody and guys like that are well known to push the limits of anything traditional. So
Yeah,
I get it. That's a good argument to talk about. I can get behind it. Me personally, I always give the edge to Memphis. I
yeah.
Memphis was, and will always be the beat all end all for me, just because I grew up watching it. That's
That's
how
what
I
you
was
grew up
trained.
watching.
Like I grew up watching that stuff with my dad, and that's how I was trained, was predominantly Memphis style, and then it evolved into the blob that you see before you.
Right. Well, anytime you want to be on, you have a standing invitation to be on. Once I get my studio situated, you can even be on in person. But so thanks for being on. Thanks for being in the chats. And I will be back here on Thursday to talk with Joe Monroe and also promote their upcoming show for Saturday with TCW. And do not forget, we have the Elimination Chamber watch along on Saturday, plus round 2 of the Digital Media Championship tournament, which is a predictions tournament. Okay. It's not wrestling.
All good, man. Appreciate you having me on, Mike.
No problem, dude. Anytime you want to be on, like I said, I'm doing that deep dive probably around like June or July. Anytime you're available, just let me know.
That's a bet.
You can be on and we can talk about, and if you want to, we can even talk about the history of hardcore wrestling.
Sounds like a winner, man. Just let me know. Give me some information. We'll see what work out.
I got you. Well, thanks for being on, and I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one.